So our next speaker is Susannah Banziger. She is a research and formulation chemist at Corteva Agriscience. She holds a PhD in inorganic chemistry from Purdue University and a BS from Butler University. She started at Corteva as a formulation scientist with a focus on developing microplastic-free products. And she now leads a group there that leverages high-throughput experimentation and automation for sustainable agrochemical formulation development.
So I'm Susannah Banziger, or Susie Banziger as I get called at work. I'm really excited today to tell you, maybe, possibly, it wants me to join the Zoom meeting. Do I just exit out of that? Great. That's great. All right, now we're good. Good. So I'm really excited to tell you how I got into automation and then how that helps us to develop sustainable agrochemical formulation products that are on the market today. And I think the best place to start is my early years. So I grew up in northern Indiana in a town called Logansport. It's an older town, often known as the city between two rivers. And one thing that stands out about this is it's surrounded by fields. There's quite a few cornfields around, and in fact, I drove past one every single day in my neighborhood on my way home from school. And so I think that's probably why, what is happening?
I'm doing Zoom stuff.
Okay, great. So I think that's, I'll just keep going. Now, I think that's probably why. When I came across this book, Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, it was highly influential to me because of the impact that DDT had on both the community and the wildlife surrounding it, because that was kind of where I was at. And so at the ripe age of 9, I went to the school principal and I said, we need to change everything we're doing and we need to be more sustainable. To which she said, inexperienced 9-year-olds should not be changing school policies. So I took that feedback and I decided to leverage that and get some experience and get some leadership so I could maybe positively impact the world. And so 4-H is a agricultural kind of national organization for kids from 3rd grade to high school. And so how it works is you get projects and you are given stipulations, and at the end of the summer you get graded against your peers on if you hit those stipulations. So I got very used to receiving feedback at a very young age about how to improve on my work processes. In addition, there's a lot of leadership opportunities tied to this, and at one point I was in charge of a club that was over the entire county. It has a high focus on community, and I think that was highly important for me growing up. The other piece of this is that I used to be very involved in the theater, and I was very excited about going more into the arts. And I never would have thought I would have gone from that stage to this stage today. But what really pivoted my career and my life was I had a family member pass away from a negative drug interaction. And it made me start thinking about maybe I should explore STEM. Maybe that's where I was supposed to be. And so I looked into pharmacy, and it was around this time I received the Lilly Endowment Scholarship, which is a scholarship that provides you a full ride to an Indiana university. And so this then led me to Butler University, which is where one of the best pharmacy programs in the state of Indiana. And if you haven't heard about it for the pharmacy program, perhaps you've heard about it for the NCAA championship in 2010 and 2011. Now, while I was at Butler, I was starting to feel a little bit lost at the beginning, and that was until I got to organic chemistry, and that's my professor, John Estep, in the background. And it was something about that that finally I felt very engaged. I think it was the puzzle pieces coming together that we could have fundamental rules to solve really big problems. And so it was around this time I went to my advisor and I said, you know I have good grades, I know I've passed the entrance exams, but I think I want to be a chemist. To which he said, you'll never get a job. And I'm really glad I didn't take that advice, and I like to think everyone in here feels differently about that statement. And so then I ended up doing work, undergraduate research with Dr. Stacey O'Reilly in inorganic chemist. And I worked with a number of colleagues that went off into grad school, and in fact I work with one of them even today. And it was Stacey that said, have you thought about getting a PhD? And I had not. And I'm glad she brought that up. And that led me to Purdue University and the lab of Dr. Tong Ren. And this is the H.C. Brown Chemistry Building that I did my work in. And in his group, we were really trying to understand the fundamental process of electron transfer. Because why it's very fundamental, it is not well understood. And so this takes us back to kind of those puzzle pieces, right? That we can put together different organometallic species to bring things into kind of, to understand these electron transfer processes. And I really enjoyed this work, but I think it was the other things along the way that I engaged in that then led me to Corteva. And so one of those things was I helped to organize the 32nd Triennium Convention for Iota Sigma Pi. And this is a national women's society in chemistry that can boast membership from Marie Curie, Gertie Corey, Dorothy Hodgkins, Carolyn Bertozzi, and Frances Arnold. So we're very proud of that. And it was during this Triennium Convention that I actually would go on to meet my future boss's boss's boss, who would actually end up showing me the lab I'm in charge of today. And so then that leads me on to Corteva Agroscience, where I am today. And this is the spin-off of the heritage companies of Dow AgroSciences and DuPont. And when you think of agricultural sciences, you might be thinking of fields. You might be thinking of farming around the world. You might be thinking of large agricultural equipment and applications. And we do that, and we do that very well. But the reason we do that is because behind all of it, we have a lot of innovative research going on in the laboratories at Corteva. And some of these things include, and are not limited to, high throughput automation, modeling and informatics, and we have a very strong pipeline from a green chemistry synthesis perspective and natural products. But I do want to address the elephant in the room, perhaps, is I was inspired by Silent Spring and I went into agrochemistry. And so if we think about the need for food, it is a really big deal. In fact, many of us are eating right now, right? And so we do need food to sustain us and the world populations. And from the very beginning of time, the first farmers are planting excess food in hopes there's enough to get through the winter. And so you're seeing that throughout time. There's these extreme ways of trying to treat crops so that there's enough. Which there's a big turning point with the publication of Silent Spring, in which there's a new focus on sustainability and how we approach agriculture from that perspective. And as we look to the future, we do know there's going to be decreased arable land, and that we need to have much more sustainable products for our growers and our consumers moving forward. And so in terms of kind of where this impacts us, there's some very extreme weather conditions going on today. There's global warming's a concern, droughts are concerns, there's microplastic concerns. So there's a number of challenges that are contributing to decreasing the arable land, in addition to potentially the water sources that can be used for farming. And we also know that the population is projected to increase by an additional 1 billion people by the year 2050. So how do we address this? How do we make sure that we can do more with less land? And so this is kind of where at Corteva we very much are focused on sustainable agriculture and formulation development. And to give you one example of how we have addressed this, I'll share with you our Rinsecore Active won the Green Chemistry Challenge. And you can see that it takes far less active ingredient to treat the same amount of land. And so it's hard to say that that is not a positive way to impact the future farming to be stewards of our land. We've also been awarded a number of other sustainability awards throughout the years. And when we talk about formulation development, the question often becomes, what is a formulation? And so this is an example of the Inatreq IQ4 technology. And I hope what this is really showing off to you is that with a formulated product, it's staying on the leaf, it's spreading out, and it's getting to the active site. We're increasing the surface area, versus the non-formulated product is bouncing off the leaf. So you're really getting more with less by being able to get it to the appropriate site right away. And then what is in a formulation? So this is kind of where high throughput technology comes in, because within every formulation, there's a number of inert ingredients at various percentages. And as a scientist, I think you can appreciate this is a lot of variables to have to play around with, to have to figure out and tune to get to the right outcome. And so with high throughput automation, we can help address this, and we can give scientists the ability to expand out kind of that initial design set. So here's just a quick example of how on the bench you might design an experiment with these ternary plots. You may only have so much time, so you select certain points, you make your samples, and then you test them for their dispersion performance, say in the tank. With high throughput automation, what we can do is we can truly fill out that triangle so you know the exact breaking points and the limits of your product, so you can understand where the flexibility lies within it. And we can also do this with less material. So we're going from that 100 mil scale to that less than a mil scale. And then we need to rethink how we view things. And so we can pull in spectroscopy and spectroscopists in general to get a look of a new way of saying what's good and what's bad. But naturally, how are we doing this? How are we approaching this? We approach this in a stepwise fashion, where with this automated first step, we're kind of creating a hazy picture. And to say, where should we really focus and what should we bring into color? But what does this look like from a numbers perspective? So from a traditional technique, it's going to take about 2 weeks to screen 96 samples. And that could generate upwards of 10 liters of hazardous waste. With the high throughput automation, or this rough initial screen, you can do the same in 30 minutes and only generate about 10 mils of water. So it's easy to see both the time saving and the sustainability piece. We do also kind of have a center screen in there to kind of filter out a little bit more so we know what to truly focus on, because we do need to scale it up. But this also allows us to generate a significant amount of data that we can learn from in the future. And so what do we do with this data? We can't forget about it. We can't just throw it in a folder. We manage it in a centralized database that can be accessed across all R&D functions so that we can truly follow a product from the very beginning out into the field and beyond. This is then organized into standardized data interpretation, which then can be fed into a machine learning model so we can generate a roadmap for future formulation development to come. So how do we do this? I am not doing this alone by any means. There is no way I could do this alone. We do this by working through a diverse cross-functional team. We have a high number of different backgrounds and abilities, but core to it all are chemists, and I think I can brag on that because we are at the ACS meeting, of many different disciplines. And if I can leave you with nothing else, it is that my journey was not linear, right? And so what I would suggest, right, is to be open to career adventures, say yes to new opportunities, and then most of all, also be open to new ways of approaching things and doing things. And so with that, I just want to say thank you to the many supporters I've had behind me and to my team, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
So formulations chemistry is kind of its own beast on top of, even separate from synthesis and analytical. And I was curious how you integrate those two very different parts of your brain.
So the kind of
work with the chemists and the molecules at the same time as working with the formulation and all the weirdnesses involved in that.
Yeah, so I will do my best to answer that. So I think it really does keep coming back to you need teams, you need to discuss it, you need to have really good conversations with each other. There are a lot of complex things going on, and not one background is going to approach it perfectly. And so what I think is really exciting about the formulations team at Corteva is we truly have diverse backgrounds. So we've got P chemists, we've got inorganic chemists, polymer scientists, analytical scientists, organic scientists, right? So we all were trained in different ways of thinking, And only together can we really come up with a much better solution. And in the automation space, we also need engineers, we need data scientists, we need people to challenge us on what's normal and what makes sense, because that's really the only way we're gonna grow. And I wish I could share the many examples we have of that every day specifically, but, I think the short answer is it takes a lot of good teamwork to get this all done. Yep.